welcome to Formula Facts episode 3. We actually finally have a race that we can talk about. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jack Like, and I'm joined here with
Destinee Day.
So Destinee. We both talked about how when we were watching this race, I don't think either of us actually stayed up for the race.
I had all the intentions.
We had to rewatch it. We didn't check our phones. And I told you, I was like, I got F1 TV. I had the driver things up. I had the data going as I was watching it. But I didn't see what happened until I was like watching it live at like 10 a.m. the next day. But what a race it was.
Such a good way to start the season.
And it was just an interesting race. You know, how much more can you add to the drama than, adding rain, not know if it's going to rain, like the whole tire situation. It was a perfect chaos.
Absolutely perfect amount of chaos. And it started before the race even started, right? Like I did get to stay up and watch the pre-show before I realized that I wasn't going to be able to stay awake for the whole race. So I just cut it off before the race even started. And at the pre-show, they were like, isn't going to rain? It is raining now, but is it going to stay raining? We don't know. We don't know how much rain. It could be a little, it could be a lot.
And that's the thing. Throughout the race, there was also like that.
Yeah. It was just a crazy, awesome way to start the season, especially with so many rookies who have never driven these cars. And then rain gets added to the mix, and it's just a disaster.
I think it was a good way to see how teams are going to perform under pressure. Sometimes you might have to wait till a little bit later in the season to see how it really plays out. But I think now, the first race and you're watching them, you can see what they're thinking with strategy. Right away, you can see what McLaren was thinking about, with Oscar and Lando. How are they going to handle that dynamic? So stuff that you might usually wait till towards the middle of the season to see how it's going to play out. We kind of all saw a lot of it, how they can fall apart under pressure, different stuff like that. The race strategy. I know we saw a lot of different strategies when it came to the tires. A lot of there was a big mess. There's seeing them keep Verstappen out, but then they brought him back in. Hamilton ended up staying out, and that didn't work out too well. So it was a big mess. And like you said, the rookies were a problem. They were a problem on both of our F1 fantasy teams. That's for sure.
Oh, so destroyed the fantasy team.
Yeah. I was looking at him thank God I put 3 times points on Lando Norris. Every other single one of my drivers was either a rookie and didn't get any points, or they got the negative points. I'm like, well, there you go.
Do you want to start off with let's just walk through the race a little bit? First things first, right? How sad was it for Isaac Hadjar to go out on a formation lap? He even qualified so well. He was 11th. He did so great for an RB, and that was just gutting.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember who I don't know if it was the last person that crashed on a formation lap. Do you remember who it was?
I don't.
It was Lance Stroll. Crashed. I'm like, wow. Well, that's a bad group to be a part of for Isaac Hadjar. But I was looking at him like, oh my gosh, so many people. I've seen that thing on Lance Stroll a lot about how he crashed in the formation lap, and I was like, oh, this is funny. But now it's going to happen again. But I think it was really upsetting to watch. I was really excited. He was on my fantasy team. I was really happy about how, in a RB, P11 in qualifying is not that bad. So, and I think Yuki did pretty well. So that's pretty looking good for RB, right? He did 5th, Yuki, in qualifying. It was exciting to see that maybe he would do something in the race. But, when it came down to go around the track just to get ready, I don't know what happened.
They've never dealt with these cars in the rain, and he just had some inexperience with it, or maybe had a little bit too much adrenaline. But it didn't even look like it was entirely within his control. We saw that with a few of the other crashes. Look at Carlos Sainz. He crashed under a safety car in the exact same thing. It was beyond his control. Fernando Alonso had an issue. Oscar Piastri got stuck in the grass and had to learn how to reverse his way back out. It was so sad to watch Hadjar, just how upset he was. And then, Lewis Hamilton's dad went and comforted him. And I just thought, oh, such a good person. And then Helmut to the press, Helmut Marko says that was embarrassing. It's come on, Helmut.
Really laid it down there, no sugarcoating. I think it was something that, I don't know if it shows with RB, had a really good way to start right in qualifying, and then we had the DNF from Hadjar, and then let me just check. I think Yuki Tsunoda finished 12th. What a drop off that was. And I don't know if that's that they're not used to doing good in qualifying. So even though it was only the first race, and I'm sure we'll have to say that for a couple other racers when we talk about them, but especially for RB, a team that's been struggling a lot recently. And when we were doing our predictions, we really didn't think they were going to be that high up. So it was really surprising. And I hope that they have a better year,
I was really surprised with Yuki, and I'm not a huge Yuki fan, but it looked like he was really laying it all out there. Like, we all know Liam Lawson did not perform well. Surprise, surprise. But it looks like Yuki kind of saw that happening and was like, I am going to get that Red Bull seat at all costs. And it really made for some good competition for RB. So I'm here for it.
And I think it's something that, we all kind of talked about, but I don't know if we ever really thought it was going to come true, right? That Yuki Tsunoda might actually one day go into the Red Bull seat that he's been striving for years now. So, but after seeing Liam Lawson, what was it, 18, right? And he, I think we started. What did he finish 18th?
He finished just above Ollie Behrman, but I think it was 14 by the end because we had 5 drivers go out.
Oh, he had a DNF. I don't think he even finished.
Oh, he didn't even finish.
No, it says it says his position. It says NC, and then his time is just DNF.
Okay, so there we go. So Liam Lawson's disappointing DNF, which is not a surprise to anybody.
Well, and he started from the pit lane too. So that was something I've never seen before in F1. Like I said, I'm pretty new, but I was looking at that. I'm like, why are they starting from the pit lane? Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are actually kind of fun. Sometimes drivers really make the most of it. I think Checo has made some comments in the past where he talks about it's a very different way to start a race, and it's kind of zen and peaceful, and you don't really have a lot of the chaos happening. But then it's also you have to make sure you're at the top of your game because it's the opposite of what you're dealing with. So
yeah, and the scary thing is he wasn't even the worst driver on the pit lane. There was another driver behind him,
Ollie Behrman.
And I couldn't even get one Ollie Behrman fail reel out before another one when he went right into the sand trap again, the gravel trap the next day. I'm like, well, I was like, I can't do another one, but it was bad.
Poor Ollie. That's got to be a disappointing start considering how well he did last year at Ferrari. That's just got to be killer.
Yeah, and he did finish at least, right? We finished last, but there were so many people that did not finish. Yeah, but just a little disappointing for Ollie. I think we all expected a little more from him. Speaking of a rookie that had a great race, I think when it finished on when we were watching it, it was in 5th, but I think they protested it, and now Kimi Antonelli finished 4th, 3-4 finish for Mercedes, and after a struggling past couple of years, that's pretty good for them.
That was amazing. What a debut. He was so good. We kind of go back and forth about if we're fans of Mercedes in this house. We do like Toto Wolff, but we're iffy on George Russell, and we've been iffy on Lewis Hamilton, to be honest. But Kimi Antonelli was a breath of fresh air, and he was so precise. He did not make mistakes. He was there, beautiful performance when all of the other rookies just failed miserably.
And I remember when I was watching the race, they were talking about how this is something that Kimi Antonelli is almost does well in. He does well in these wet races, which is really kind of interesting. And I'm excited to see how he does on Shanghai because it's just not planned to be rain. So let's see what happens there. But what I think that also could cause some drama with is, Max Verstappen kind of lucked out at getting second, thanks to so many, there's the yellow flags and then Piastri spun out. So I wonder what's going to happen when we see in China. There's no weather disruptions. What's going to happen with, we saw before the yellow flag, the gap was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger from the McLaren and Max Verstappen. And it wasn't George Russell was catching Max Verstappen. He really wasn't. Max Verstappen was getting away from Russell, but the McLaren was going so fast in front of him. It was ridiculous.
I mean, McLaren, they're so fast. I think they're going to be tough to beat this year.
Yeah. But like I said, I'm never going to count Max out. I think he really had a good race and it played to his strengths. I was thinking about before. I'm like, oh, it's going to rain. You know, that's the perfect race for Max because, you know, Max does well in those races and he does well under pressure. He really rises to the occasion. And I think I think Red Bull was happy with how Max finished. You know, went from P3 to P2. I think they were happy with that. I was happy with Max. I think it was just, I don't know if he really ever had a chance of getting in front of the McLaren. Towards the end, though, he was actually doing a pretty good job catching with them, which is exciting to see. Once the DRS is enabled for the whole race in China, I'm excited to see if it will be closer because I think they were really pulling away because Max couldn't catch up with the DRS. So now that if he has DRS, I'm excited to see if it will get closer because at the end it was pretty close.
Yeah, we thought for sure. We were like, we thought for sure like there was a good chance that Max could have caught him and taken that away from him. So, I mean, who knows? It's going to be a nail biter for drivers. So on your predictions, you predicted, and you said it was a gamble, a strong Williams finish. And although it wasn't Carlos Sainz, Williams looked real good.
Yeah, I think when I did my full season predictions, I had Williams up there pretty high. I think they're gonna have a really good year, and I thought that was gonna be led by Carlos Sainz, and obviously I think it will be when it comes down to it towards the end. I still think that, but Alexander Albon, it really shows. I think we kind of all put him in the back of our head, thinking maybe he wasn't that good of a driver, maybe he was coming towards the end of his career. But if we look back, when he was back at Red Bull, he really put out some amazing races in that car. So I think it shows that when he's in a good car and when he's with surrounded by people that want to get better, I think Williams this year is really going to have a good chance to compete, especially when Carlos Sainz is back and racing and he's not going to DNF and, you know, spin out during the yellow flag under the safety car. I think it will be a really exciting year for them. You want to say anything about Williams? Sorry.
No, I think it's just really great to see the team come back. You know, it's one of the oldest F1's teams. It's legendary. And after so many years of struggling, it'll be really great to see them come back and make a real big push for it. I mean, honestly, they can go up there and compete with Mercedes and Red Bull. And I think it's going to be Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Williams all fighting in the midfield. Like, I just think that gap is going to shrink between the teams.
Yeah, I think last year we were kind of used to just looking at, you know, it was kind of McLaren and Ferrari and the Red Bull was in it. And then towards the end, it kind of wasn't Red Bull because they kind of dropped off and we kind of saw that coming. But I think this year it really will be close. After seeing, I think Mercedes really worked hard in the offseason. Williams definitely has worked hard over the past couple of years of, you know, we kind of heard them. I was watching a clip of the Williams team principal talking about like how they go into the race thinking. And, you know, they don't go into every race thinking that they want to get the maximum points. You know, they might be thinking that they want to test something out this race. And that was kind of past, but this year you can tell they're really going for it. And I think that has paid off. And a lot of these times we're watching Williams and thinking, wow, they're really struggling. They're really struggling. But it's all coming together. I think that's really exciting. And now that we can have like, right, that midfield's kind of shrinking, right? So I think it's kind of like pretty good upper, let's see, McLaren's going to be up there, Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, and Williams, those top five. And then, right, the other five in the bottom is kind of like a pretty big drop-off, right, when you get to them. But if you want to get to a team that might be towards the bottom, two teams, actually, who put out okay races, right, pretty good races for them. Lance Stroll, right, went P6 for Aston Martin, and Nico Hülkenberg, seventh in the Kick Sauber. And I think he already scored more points than Sauber did altogether last year. I might be wrong, but I think that's what happened.
No, I'm pretty sure I saw that stat too. Crazy. Absolutely crazy, but good for them.
They would do it.
Yeah, I mean, but like, how great for them, right? This is their last year as Sauber. They're getting ready to make the transition to Audi. I also feel bad for the drivers at the back of the pack. I mean, granted, 5 drivers didn't finish this race. So, some competition has been taken out at the back of the pack, but it was cool to see them score points.
I don't know. I really wasn't thinking about Kick Sauber being towards the top of my my list this year. I was actually really thinking they're gonna have another bad year, but I think it's really exciting that you've had so many different teams right in the top 10. You see McLaren's then Red Bull, Mercedes, Williams, Aston Martin, Kick Sauber, and Ferrari all in the top 10. And then Alpine's pretty close, right? P11, Racing Bulls 12, Haas 13. Like they're all like relatively close, and this is all back to back to back, so that you can see these teams. I think it's going to be such a close year, and it might not. I hope it's going to be right in the Drivers' Championship, but if not, the Constructors' Championship, right? We saw McLaren had a really good race with Lando, but based off points they got for the whole team, I think they're about tied right now with Mercedes.
I mean, it's still early. It's first race of the year, right? I mean, like you said, we'll learn more this week at Shanghai, and we'll learn more as the first few races get underway. So it'll be an interesting one.
I think it will be interesting to see if I think we kind of saw that it was like Red Bull was kind of like prioritizing Max only, and Sergio was kind of like towards the back, right? Because he was really performing the best. But now we see, right, and it was McLaren was both their drivers are doing really well, and that's how they won the constructors. But now it's right if you look at it, now McLaren, right, Lando Norris. You look at the last race, right, only the last race because McLaren, right, Lando Norris was P1, Piastri was a big drop off at 9, but then Mercedes, right, both their drivers did good. It's gonna be really exciting. It's almost like deja vu, but I'm really excited.
Well, and I think to take a little point on McLaren for a hot second, right before the race, Piastri signs a massive contract extension. So both drivers are staying at McLaren for a long time. The second thing is that during the race, the team made it abundantly clear that Piastri had better follow team orders, and team orders were that Lando was the number one driver, even though it's Piastri's home race, even though that he had a lot to prove, but that turned out to be a really amazing call because then he kind of went and messed that up. Yeah. I mean, I just thought, okay, they're starting off this season with a clear plan.
And it was kind of interesting to see how that kind of worked out because I remember they were interviewing Zach Brown live during the race and they were talking to him. And I think they were asking him like, well, what are you going to do? And right at that point it was, we're going to let them race. Oh, okay, they're going to let them race. Let's see how that goes. Right. And then it became, okay, now we're going to prioritize Lando. They said that over the team radio. And then it went back to Zach talking again the second time, because Zach is like, now he's on one of the commentators is saying that they're going to let them race again. Well, it's just such I don't think there's a clear solution that they have in there. And I don't think that they want to have one almost. It's such a mess that we want to let them race. Well, then they tell Lando that he's right. They're going to let Lando go ahead, and then Oscar drops back, and then he spins out. Right now, Max is back ahead. I think that there's not like a clear vision of what I don't know if they probably know what they want, but I don't know if they can tell both drivers that because right, these are both drivers that don't want to be backup drivers. They both want to be competitors for the constructor championship, for the driver championship. So we'll see what happens as the year plays out. Now, what do we see happen with Ferrari, right, and Hamilton, his first race in Australia, right, this year?
Yeah, so disappointing. So horribly disappointing.
Yeah, that was it.
No. One, how hilarious is Charles Leclerc's race engineer? Like that, we were rolling laughing while we were watching that. But also, Lewis really seemed to struggle with his first engineer in 12 years that isn't Bono. I mean, I don't know how long he was with Bono. He was with Bono for a long time. But he was trying really hard to be polite and stay kind and positive, but you could tell he was also like, I know what I'm doing. Please leave me alone. So the discussion here has been, did Lewis think he was going to come into Ferrari and he was going to be a golden child? And Ferrari is now saying, no, you came to us, you play by our rules. And that is an engineer that talks nonstop to you through the entire race.
Yeah, I think that's something that it's going to be exciting to see. I think even when Lewis was at Mercedes, we saw that he had problems every once in a while with his race engineer over the radio. He was always kind of like, all right, leave me alone, let me drive. And I think that he is not used to Ferrari and the way that they talk to their drivers during the race. It is a complete mess. I think we'll have to make a compilation at the end of the year of all the times that we're going to have these funny moments. If they said, Charles Leclerc has a ridiculous amount of moments that he has with over team radio. It's ridiculous, and I think it shows that. I think the greatest weakness in every driver, right? I said the greatest weakness last year of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz was Ferrari, right? That's always like the greatest weakness of them is because it's such like. They could pull out a great race, and the next week, they're both going to, like, spin out, and, they don't know what's going to happen, right? And they're going to have a horrible strategy. So it's going to be exciting to see. Like you said, I think you brought up a really good point about that Lewis was going to go in there thinking that he's going to get everything he wants and that he's going to be the number one, right? And they're going to let him do whatever he wants. And Ferrari's saying, no, you really haven't done anything too interesting in the last couple of years. We're trying to bring you back. You're going to play by our rules, which is what Ferrari should do. I think they should do that.
I agree. I definitely agree. Do you want to get into Shanghai this week?
Yeah, I was going to say we could talk about this forever, but let's get into what's coming up this week in Shanghai.
All right. So the Chinese Grand Prix is held in Shanghai. It is a total of 56 laps, 5.45 kilometers. There are 2 DRS zones. And it is designed intentionally to look like the Chinese symbol Sheng, which means upward. And that's your formula fact.
That's a really good formula fact. Wow.
It's very interesting.
That's a good one.
But I think it's a cool looking track if you look at the design because it has this like really interesting turn structure in the first few turns, which is just kind of wild for the drivers. Yeah.
I was just looking at what happened last year, right? Because this was one of the earlier races last year too, and then he kind of continued the domination, right, of Max Verstappen. There was a sprint race there last year, and there's going to be a sprint race there this year. Max took both the race and he took the sprint. But in the race, Lando Norris was 2, right? Leclerc 4, Sainz was 5, Russell was up there, and actually Fernando Alonso had a P7 finish there. So I think it's going to be another really interesting one. Obviously, that race wasn't very close. Max Verstappen finished his time. Let's see, it was an hour. I think it's an hour 40, right, and 52 seconds.
Yeah, Lando was 13 seconds behind Max.
It wasn't really a close race. So interesting to see what's going to happen this year. I think that if Max can pull out a good qualifying, that he might see himself back towards one of the contenders here in the drivers.
Yeah, and I mean, like Max started on pole position last year, and Checo was number 2, so they locked out the front row, and Checo ended up finishing 3rd. Interestingly, Fernando Alonso qualified 3rd last year, and he finished 7th. So that was kind of wild to see that happen.
I think this is another interesting one that we saw was Nico Hülkenberg actually finished in the points with Haas last year. He finished P10, and then not far behind him, now the Haas driver, last year he was at Alpine, Esteban Ocon, finished P11, and then Albon was P12. So I think it's going to be pretty exciting to see how these teams do, right? Because obviously they didn't do that bad last year compared to what the car they were in, right? So I think it's exciting to see. Maybe hopefully Albon, right, will be a little bit higher this year. George Russell didn't do too bad last year. Excited to see where Kimi might finish, but I think that this is a really important race for Max to show what he can do with his car, when there's no crazy conditions going on. Yeah, you go.
My predictions for the Chinese sprint race is as follows. Max is 1st. Carlos in 2nd. I think he's going to pull it out. It's going to be wild. It's going to be an amazing race. George in 3rd. I think George Russell is really gonna, show us his all on the sprint. He was on podium this last week. He kind of sneaks in there sometimes and snatches a podium when you least expect it. So, recapping for the Chinese Grand Prix, I think it is a Max, Carlos, George podium in that order.
Okay. So for my sprint race, I had something written down, but I think I'm going to change it. I don't think that Lando is going to do good in the sprint. I don't have him in my top 3. I'm going to have him in the top 3 of my race. I don't think he's in the top 3 of my sprint. Max has done historically really well right in the sprints. Last year, he was first in the race and in the sprint. So I'm going to put Max at number 1 in the sprint like you did. Now, number 2, I think last year it was Lewis. I don't think it's going to be Lewis again. I'm going to put Carlos Sainz. And then after what I saw happen right in Melbourne, I'm really excited. I'm going to put Alex Albon at my number 3. I think he's going to have a great race at Williams. And I think it's going to really show what that car is going to do. When they don't have as many laps to try to figure it out, I think Alex Albon is going to pull out a great sprint race.
So you're saying it's going to be a Verstappen 1 and a Williams 2,
Williams
3?
2-3. I think that's. Don't put that on Instagram if it's wrong, but I think it's going to I don't know. I think that Alex Albon had a really good race in Melbourne, and I think it really surprised a lot of us.
Okay.
Like you said, I was thinking maybe I would stick a Mercedes driver in there, but then I remembered that George Russell loves kissing the wall, and I don't know if I can really trust Kimi Antonelli yet. I was thinking about maybe putting Kimi Antonelli in the 3. I don't trust Russell. I don't trust.
That'd be wild.
Yeah, I don't know. So no matter what my number 3 choice was, it was going to be a crazy one. It was either going to be Kimi or it was going to be Albon. But I was like, you know what? I'll just go for the crazier one just to put it on Instagram. I think everybody's going to love it. So here's to sum it up. My sprint race predictions for Shanghai, China is Max 1. I have Sainz as my 2. And putting up big points for the Williams, 2-3 is going to close it off with Alex Albon.
We're going to have to buy you a Williams shirt before the season's over.
I got to paint my McLaren hat blue after my views have changed.
All right, so I think for the Shanghai Grand Prix, I think we're going to have a Max win. I think this dude is hungry. I think he often lies about how good the car is during practice so that people don't know how good the car is. So I think he has a lot to prove after last week. He was so close to getting Lando. So I'm going to go with a Max win. I'm going to go with a Lando 2nd because these two are just going to be fighting head to head all year. And I'm going to go with a Carlos 3rd. I think this dude, Alex Albon's performance in Melbourne was really good. And I think Carlos would have performed really well had he not crashed into the wall into the safety car. So I'm going to go super crazy and Carlos on a podium. So recapping, I think my picks for the Shanghai Grand Prix, Max in 1st, Lando 2nd, Carlos 3rd.
Now I want to make my predictions for the race for Shanghai. I think Max is going to have a great race. I'm going to put him at my P1. I think he's going to finish with the podium. He has something to prove after Melbourne. I think that car does have speed that he does not want to show. Number 2, as much as I don't like doing it, I was really toying with it. I'm going to put Lando at my 2. I think that car is just ridiculously fast. And no matter what, as much as I don't like him, that car will finish in a podium. And my number 3, I think you kind of had a crazy one. I think mine's a little bit crazier. I think Kimi Antonelli is going to get his first podium in F1. I think it's going to happen. I have a good feeling about him. Like I said, I don't trust George Russell. And I don't know if I really can trust Kimi, but I think that it shows in this, once we get the longer race from the sprint, I think he can do it.
If he pulls it off, I will be so impressed.
So just to sum it up for you, I think that it will be Max P1, Lando P2, and then his first podium finish on F1, Kimi Antonelli, will be P3.
What a world. Watch, it's going to be none of... Well, no. I think we're spot on with Max and Lando. Our third place watch is going to be George Russell again.
Yeah. Nico Hulkenberg finishing up with the...
Ollie Behrman.
We should do a new set. Who's going to crash this week in Formula One? We had a pretty good chance last week than the last week.
I think we should do a running bit. When will Liam Lawson get cut from Red Bull, and when will Yuki take his place?
I don't think Christian is anymore. I think that string is. I think it's about to get cut. I don't know. Christian Horner does not want that.
I'm betting he doesn't make it to Silverstone. They switch him out before then.
I think this year that Red Bull is not going to try to just be the Max show. I think this year they're going to try to compete again in the constructors. I think they want to. So I don't see it happening. I don't think he's going to last very long. I don't even know if I'll give him. I don't know if I'll give him that. I don't know. He has to really do good in China. I think that starts with a good qualifying, but we'll see what happens. Well, thank you for watching episode 3 of Formula Facts. Today was definitely an exciting one for us. We got to break down Melbourne, and that was really an exciting race. And I hopefully have another just as exciting race, even if it's a little bit less, it's still going to be a crazy race in Shanghai. Definitely make sure to try to watch it. We'll be breaking it down next week and then getting into the next race after that. Now we're on the grind. We'll be posting stuff every couple of days, what we think. Our podium predictions will be out there pretty soon. So please make sure to follow us on TikTok, follow us on Instagram, watch our episodes on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you watch them, and just support us, and that'd be great. So for the episode 3 of Formula Facts, we're going to close it off. Thank you for watching. I'm Jack Like.
I'm Destinee Day.